Here we go.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Slim Life.
Good morning. If you
Good
would
morning.
please introduce yourself and spell your name for us.
My name is Robert A. Durr III. My last name is spelled D-E-R.
Thank you.
Mr. Durr, how are you employed?
I'm a crime scene investigator with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been working as a crime scene investigator with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
Almost 18 years.
It's
a long time.
What are your general typical duties as a crime scene investigator with the Sheriff's Office?
So I respond to persons and property crimes where I document through photographs or other measurements possibly, and collect evidence as it relates to those types of crimes.
As part of those duties, do you from time to time attend autopsies as well?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what do you do when you attend an autopsy?
I take photographs and then I collect any potential evidence that might be located by the medical examiners.
And by potential evidence, you mean things like maybe clothing or objects that are removed from the body, things of that nature?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to show you what's already been introduced to State's Exhibits 28B. And just if you can take a quick look at those, and you can open it. They're already open, so you can go and just see. In this particular case, or do you recognize those?
Yes, sir.
And what are they?
They're the projectiles that I recovered.
All right, and so when you were at the scene in this particular case, you took photos
Yes, sir.
and you collected those projectiles?
Yes, sir.
Were you present when those projectiles were removed from the body?
Yes, sir.
All right, and you observed them take them out?
Yes, sir.
And so then do you photograph and document them being taken out?
Yes, sir.
And then you collect them yourself?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you may publish. Okay, I'm going to start with specifically 20A.
Yeah, the timeline's coming. Let's wait for it.
Okay, and that in fact, you were there when that was removed from the body of Jayla Bass?
Yes, sir.
And you observed them and you took photos of it and then you collected it and took it into evidence?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, besides that one projectile, did they also recover some fragments from inside of Jayla Bass's body?
Yes, sir.
All right, now I'm going to show you 20B again, which has already been admitted into evidence. Just going to show them this way. So they're very small, correct?
Yes, sir.
And these are in fact what is taken out of the body, and they've been described as fragments of a projectile. What would that be? What are fragments?
So fragments could be anything that separated off of a projectile. It could be where it was damaged or anything maybe it split apart as it was entering.
Okay, so this is most likely from the same projectile that came into the body?
I couldn't be specific on that, but
Okay.
Yeah, no.
One moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Judgeable passwords.
All right. Cross.
Good morning, Mr. Durr.
good morning.
Now, you did go out to the crime scene, right, and assist with the scene there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but you didn't collect any evidence yourself?
That's correct.
And then you ended up being tasked with following
He's the
up with
supervisor.
attending the autopsy in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, routinely, when a body is received by the medical examiner's office, the hands are typically bagged, is that right?
A lot of times, but not always. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and why are the hands bagged?
To protect anything that might potentially be on there.
And that is typical of what happens like at the scenes that you've been out in where there's been a body at the scene that the medical examiner's office will bag the hands when they're there.
Yes, ma'am.
In this case, when you attended the autopsy, was there any swabbing done of Jayla's hands?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Okay, and then sometimes GSR testing is requested by the detectives, is that right?
Sometimes, yes, ma'am.
And in this case, that was not done.
Correct.
Nothing further.
Anything else?
Okay,
All right,
wow,
you can
that
sit
was
down,
quick.
Sir, thank you. He released from his subpoena?
Jeez, they got him up out of there.
All right. Call your next witness.
State calls Detective Clay Hoberman. Action Judge, can we call Cheyenne Miley first, please?
Raise your right hand, please.
Sorry
Do you
about that,
solemnly
y'all.
swear or affirm that testimony that you're about to give in this call will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. This one.
I don't know what that sound is. Sorry, y'all.
Hi, good morning. If you would please introduce yourself and spell your name for us.
Good morning. It's Cheyenne Wheaton. I'm sorry, Cheyenne Miley. It was Wheaton during it's an investigation. I apologize. It's Shyanne. Last
Oh,
name
she
Miley.
murdered.
Miley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please tell the jury where you work.
I work for Hillsborough. Sorry, can you hear me? I work for Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office as a detective with our homicide section.
How long have you been working at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
I've been with the sheriff's office for almost 8 years, and I've been with our homicide section for almost 3.
So on the night of this event, August 29th of 2022, were you working with the homicide department as a detective?
I was.
What part did you play in this investigation for why we're here today, the events of August 29th of 2022?
The lead detective, Detective Gabbo, asked me to pick up some additional video surveillance from a
Is that
residence near
Bobby
the incident
Alton?
scene.
What residence did you go to?
That's
It was on
funny.
Heritage Club Drive. The numerical, I believe,
slow this
was
down a little bit, y'all.
13937.
Okay, and I'm showing you what's already been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 6, but I want you to look at it. Do you recognize it?
I do.
When you went and you pulled the video, help us understand what process do you go through when you're pulling a video from a surveillance camera that may be at a residence versus maybe a business?
Well, I meet with the resident, confirm that we're allowed to view their video, obtain their video, at which point she did say that she was willing to provide the video with us. I checked the date and timestamp on the live video with what I have on real time, so whether that's me checking my phone or my watch, and ensure that the date and timestamp on the video surveillance is in fact correct.
I'm not a fan
So
fan
when
of
you went to this
380s either.
residence in Heritage Grove Apartments and you looked at the video surveillance at the timestamp, compared it to your phone, what did you find out?
I saw that the date was accurate, but the time was about 1 minute behind real time. So if, like, the time right now is 9:33, so the time on the video surveillance was showing 9:32, just for an example.
The videos that you pulled that are on what you've seen and identified as State's Exhibit 6, does it include the relevant time frame from the entire incident?
Yes, it does.
I don't have any further questions, Judge.
All right.
No questions.
All right. You can
Wow,
sit
that
down.
was it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She released from her subpoena?
Yes, Judge. She is good.
All right, thank you. Call your next witness.
The state calls Detective Clay Hoberman.
They're not wasting any time in this one. But this also isn't a RICO. So,
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this call will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Come this way. Good morning again. If you would please introduce yourself and spell your name for us.
Yes, ma'am. The name is Clay Hoberman. First name is Clay, C-L-E-Y. Last name is Hoberman,
I see you, Clay.
Hoberman.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Tell the jury where you work.
I work with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you worked for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
I have worked there over 14 years now.
What's your title now?
I'm a detective with the Sheriff's Office.
Were you a detective on August 29th to August
Detective
30th of
Bowtie.
2022?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
At that time, did you have a specific unit or department that you were working with?
More broadly, I'm assigned to Criminal Investigations Division, and then more narrowly, I'm in the Homicide section.
Help us understand, as a detective in the homicide section, what are your duties?
We investigate a number of different cases exclusively homicides, as the name would suggest, but we also investigate cases that include any natural deaths through suicides, overdoses, and then we have a couple other assignments that we will assist on if they're kidnappings. So we do a broad range of things, and then we will also cover for other criminal investigation units as well to assist in their investigations.
During a homicide investigation, is there just one detective that's decided to be involved in the investigation, or are there multiple?
Generally, we have no less than 3 for 3 specific and designated roles, and then we may also have other detectives assisting those primary 3 roles.
Explain to the jury so that they understand what is the purpose of having at least the 3 detectives involved in each homicide investigation.
Those 3 roles are going to include your lead detective, who is responsible for a majority of the
So you can all get on the same page?
activities or requirements for the investigation. You have your assist that is working in tandem with your lead investigator, and then you also have a scene detective or scene investigator whose responsibility is managing the scene and understanding all the facts of the scene, and then working with the lead investigator throughout the remainder of the investigation.
When you are a detective working with the homicide department, do you typically perform one of these duties of lead, assist, or scene at every single homicide that you go out to, or does it differ?
Yes, in every one of those cases, at least those 3 roles are assigned. As individual detectives, we may be assigned one role for one investigation, and we may shift to a different role for another investigation. But at least those 3 roles are always covered in every assignment or in every investigation that we go out to.
So since you became a detective in the homicide department of Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, have you had occasions where you were the lead detective?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you also had occasions where you were the scene detective?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, in this case involving the defendant Jermaine Bass, on August 29th, August 30th of 2022, tell the jury what your role was in this homicide investigation.
I was assigned as the scene detective.
When you say scene detective, I understand you just explained that it was walking around documenting the scene. Let's get into the more detailed part of what exactly you do. So let's say you're called out to a scene, you're given the role of scene detective. Walk the jury through what you generally do when you are assigned to be the scene detective for a homicide.
So the scene detective is responsible for, first and foremost, the scene, the location where the incident is happening, as well as any secondary, tertiary locations that might be included. It might include vehicles. It's essentially everything that is going to be a physical portion of the investigation. Generally speaking, our scene detective is responsible for. That could include writing all of the search warrants for those physical locations or addresses. That includes the searching of those locations, and that includes the documentation, both collection of evidence as well as documenting through photographs, taking photographs, overseeing that the proper photographs are being taken.
So I understand that at a homicide investigation, there's these at least three positions that are assigned. But is it safe to say that homicide detectives are generally not the first people to respond to, for instance, shots called that call that comes in to 911?
Yes, that's fair. Generally, deputies are going to be our first responding units coming to that call to kind of assess what is happening there and make a determination as to the additional investigation that is required. And at that time, then phone calls are being made to request either homicide come out or special victims units come out, whatever detectives might be an assist to that investigation.
Once homicide detectives are sent to an investigation scene, are they first apprised by the deputies of what they saw when they first arrived?
Yes, usually to some extent there is some foreknowledge of what is happening at the scene or what has happened or has been observed. It may come through deputies, it may come through supervisors, but generally speaking, when we do arrive at a scene, we have some idea of what has been done at the scene or what we may be facing at the scene.
Based on the information that you're given, when you first arrive to a homicide scene, does that information and what you're told affect some of the decisions or the direction that you're documenting or your investigation of the scene? Does that information affect the decisions you make at the scene?
Yes, I would say it does. I think that as one of the responsibilities of the scene detective, you are not only doing that documentation and trying to get an overall objective understanding of what may have happened there, but you're obviously going to be contrasting the information that you're getting. First, your initial information of what is coming through your dispatch call. Secondly, your information that you're getting once you arrive to the scene and talk to your deputies or you're talking to some of those supervisors. And then throughout the investigation, our scene detectives stay in contact with the lead investigator who's out doing their interviews, who's out collecting video surveillance, and is getting a working knowledge of what's happening outside of that house. And they are in constant communication with the scene detective to try to determine what things might be of special importance or value within that residence.
When you became involved in the investigation of this case, were you given information by other deputies when you arrived about what happened?
Yes, ma'am.
What were you told?
We were told that there...
It's effective
not-
center, Judge. He
that's not
explained that he was
hearsay.
given information at the scene, and from that information, he makes certain decisions at the scene of what document and what not to document.
Well, I have no idea what was said at this time, so sustained.
Can
Wow.
we approach the bench to proffer, Judge?
Sure.
I don't see how that's hearsay. It's what was told to him. It's pretty straightforward. All right, they're going to argue a little bit. Boy, that's a sight right there. Leave that alone.
After you received information about what the other deputies saw or heard when they first arrived, what did you decide to do next?
For this investigation, I collected information from the deputies that were there at the scene and used some of that information as well as some observations we were able to make just from the outside of the residence to complete a search warrant for that residence.
Explain to the jury what a search warrant is and what it means.
A search warrant is a document that we use in an event that we may be recovering evidence from that location or from a person or from a general area or even potentially from a cell phone in which we think that might be evidence of the case and of which somebody may not be willing or voluntarily wanting us to enter into that location or enter into that cell phone device. For a search warrant, we need probable cause, which is essentially a probability that there is evidence in that location, be it a phone, be it a residence, that we would need for our investigation.
Thank you,
We
Perfect
use
Peace.
a combination of our own observations as well as observations of other fellow deputies or detectives to put information into that document explaining why we feel that we need to go into that residence and collect evidence or potentially collect photographs, anything that may be of value for our investigation. That has to be signed by the state attorney's, or excuse me, approved by the state attorney's office and signed by a judge saying, yes, you're allowed to go into that location to do whatever you need to do for your investigation.
So
Sure.
in this investigation, you obtained a search warrant. Did you search the entirety of the townhome involved in this case?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
So after that, did you begin documenting the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, as a part of documenting the scene, are you, as the scene investigator or detective, are you responsible for actually taking the photos and actually placing the evidence markers, or do you work with someone else to help you do that?
We work with our crime scene investigations department or our CSI department.
Now, in this case, did that include crime scene investigator Cheyenne Bader?
Yes, ma'am.
When
I don't know
you
why the feed's making that noise. Sorry, y'all.
first walked into the townhome, what did you see of relevance when you first walked in? And I'm putting on the Elmo 22A.
Within entering the residence, the door opens inward and we come into a foyer area that has a kitchen just off the side of it. Beyond that, there's a dining room area, and then a little further beyond that, there's a TV room area or an entertainment room, I guess, or living room space. On that location or at that location is a black couch, and we noted what we believed was going to be some blood on the edge of that couch or the side cushion of that couch, as well as a small metal item that looks like a clasp or a toothed clasp. That, just based on my familiarity with them, looks like the kind of clasp that's used to secure an elastic bandage or an ace bandage with those little teeth that kind of bite into the fabric.
Now, once you go up the stairs,
Said they're
what's the
gonna
first
sound from
bedroom
the
that you see
basketball
up
court.
on top of the stairs?
That's crazy.
The first bedroom you come to when you are ascending the stairs is going to be what we determined was the children's bedroom.
Yes, he
Now,
was sitting on the
seats
couch with him.
22R and facing on the Elmo. Are we looking at the top bunk in 22R, or are we looking at the bottom bunk?
This would be the top bunk, ma'am.
Okay, we're looking at the back of the photo. You can see a sticker that is on the wall, right about the middle that I'm pointing to right here. It's a yellow sticker labeled Damage A. We see another sticker labeled Damage B. And we see another green sticker, which we see labeled red substance. I want to specifically talk about Damage A and Damage B. What wall are we looking at that we're pointing to where Damage A sticker is labeled on? What is on the other side of this wall?
On the other side of that wall is going to be a bathroom.
Now, I'm facing,
Scratching records.
one moment, I'm sorry.
Y'all are crazy. Someone said they have a DJ in their courtroom.
I'm trying not to get the photos out of order, but I can't make any promises. I'm placing 22
Shout out to Serratos.
on the elbow. Tell us to the right over here, what room is this? You can see like a small, maybe what, a quarter of an inch opening, and it looks like it's going into a room. Explain to the jury what room that this is going in.
So the darkened margin on the right side of your photograph as you're looking at it is going to be the darkened space just because of the lighting at that time of the children's bedroom or of the kid's bedroom, where that same bunk bed we just saw in the previous photograph would be located.
Once we're inside the bathroom that's depicted in 22Z, I'm placing 22AA on the Elmo. Is this a closer up image of that exact same wall? And am I correct in pointing to the yellow marker on A1 to the right? It's labeled damage A1. Is that the same wall, the back side of the wall, belonging to damage A?
Yes, ma'am.
And for reference, I'm putting back on the Elmo 22R.
So that would be
The Elmo
this
is a
one?
little fuzzy, if you can give it just a minute. So the damage we're seeing right here in 22A.
yeah, this one.
Is it your testimony from what you saw? It goes through the wall and exits in damage A1 that we're seeing on 22AA on the right over here.
Yes, ma'am, that is our belief. There is a space in just a normal construction space
That's their
between those
belief.
two
Do y'all
walls.
agree?
But yes, it would appear, based on some other continued observations that we make once we get to A2 and A3, that that's going to be one continuous trajectory of a projectile going through the wall.
Now, you explained earlier that you were working with the homicide unit as a detective for quite some time. About how many times at the time of this incident had you been assigned to be a scene detective?
Probably in excess of 25 or 30 times for scene.
Okay. And during those 25 to 30 times, or other times that you've been called out to a homicide investigation, have those before included gunshots going through drywall?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had an occasion in these prior scenes that you visited to notice the shape that a gunshot may make when it's going through drywall?
Yes, ma'am.
Describe for us the shape of 22R, where we're looking at damage A.
It would appear, oh, go ahead.
Well, sorry. I was specifically wanting to ask to you, based on your training and your experience, the significance of the shape of the damage A that we see depicted in this photo.
With this photograph, we're seeing a rounded shape as it goes through the wall. When you're seeing the clean edges, generally speaking, that would refer to an entrance or the round coming from this side of the wall penetrating into this
That makes
wall.
sense.
I think you can see slightly from A1, it's a little rougher, and that's because as it starts to come back out of the wall on the opposite side, it's pushing that material in front of it, so it fragments as it's coming out. And you'll see either the wall being pushed out in that direction, or you'll see it's a little bit rougher around those edges as the edges of those are pushed out.
Yeah, but going back to this doesn't make sense. If she's laying there, why is there a shot here? Or sleeping? I don't know.
Or you'll see it's a little bit rougher around those edges as the edges of those are pushed out.
The damage in A1 depicted in 22A that we see on the shower wall. You just mentioned if a projectile was going through the wall, you may see the sides of the shape made in the wall be pushed out slightly. Am I understanding that correctly?
From the exiting side, yes, ma'am.
And let's see, 22BB, I'm placing on the Elmo. Describe for the record what we're looking at in damage A1, specifically around the shape that you noticed.
So this would be what we believe is the corresponding exit from the A damage or the initial A damage. And you'll see where the paint is kind of chipped as that force is pushing that out. And we'll start pushing portions of the wall out with it as the bullet comes out of the wall or would be exiting from the wall. That's a hallmark of what we would typically see with that. It's not impossible to be reversed, but this would generally speak to us as this being an exit of a projectile coming out through the wall.
Now, when you're given information, when you first
Yeah,
arrive
Rusty,
to a
I don't know,
homicide
man.
about what may have happened or may not have happened, as part of your duties as a scene investigator, are you looking to see whether or not the forensic evidence or the physical evidence at the scene either match up or don't match up to the story that you had been told may or may not have happened?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, we're looking at 22C, damage A2. It
Dang,
looks like
sorry,
we're
y'all.
in the same shower that we've been talking about, our bathroom that we've been talking about. bed is right next to the children's room, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is this shower curtain also depicted in, or a part of the shower that's in 22Z that we've been using for reference? If you were to walk in to the left, would you immediately see what we're looking at in 22Z, the shower?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Now, tell us what you notice about damage A2, specifically the shape.
It is somewhat rounded, at least for a portion of the side. The upper, as we see in the photograph, the upper and then the right side of that damage or defect does appear to be rounded. And then there are, you can't see it in this photograph specifically, but you can kind of start to see it. There are subsequent holes behind that, or tearings of the same plastic shower material behind that. As it would appear, a projectile continues on its path through the shower curtain.
We're looking at, on the Elmo, 22B. For reference, we see the same damage A2 that we were just discussing in the previous photo, but we also see it slightly blurred on the tile, a damage A3 on a yellow sticky label. Now,
Someone's
I'm
laying the
placing
track down.
22E. Tell the jury what is significant to you based on your training and experience about the shape of damage AE in the shower tile.
Damage A3 appears to be the termination of that projectile going through the wall, impacting
gosh.
the tile. And that's what
Might
we're
have to
seeing
skip
kind of
through this.
centered
This
in
is
that damage
rough.
there, is the backside of the projectile or bullet.
Just hang tight for one moment.
And it sucks because this is an
One
important part.
specific-
We gotta suffer through, y'all.
Now, during your investigations as a scene detective, at some point during certain investigations, does it become important to take measurements?
Yes, ma'am.
Help us understand, in what situations do you decide to take measurements, and what situations do you decide it may not be necessary?
Most all of our collected items are going to have some measurement to them. You'll see many of these stickers that are being photographed have a scale or have a measurement already on the sticker that helps us understand if it's next to something, what the size is that we're dealing with. If it's something that we find of specific importance that we're collecting, we may do additional measurements of it once we get back to crime scene and have a more controlled environment. But generally speaking, several of our areas that are photographed will have some sort of scale to them. It's not necessarily to give you a specific measurement as to the width or the diameter of the bullet, but it is giving you some context as to how big this portion of damage is on the wall.
I want to talk about trajectory rods. Yesterday, we were introduced to the idea of trajectory rods. Tell us why, in certain cases, you may use
Need a new
a
transmission.
trajectory rod.
A trajectory rod is just a tool that we're using. We have to have two solid areas that are either impacted or traversed by a bullet for us, or projectile, for us to be able to use a trajectory rod. We have to have a point A and a point B that we can pass that rod through. Generally speaking, when we do have bullet damages, we are getting some rounded areas that it's going through, as we've kind of seen through this evidence. And then the trajectory rod allows us to pass a straight implement through those holes and now look at the directionality of where that rod is pointing. Generally speaking, if we're looking back in the direction of where we believe the bullet came from, we can get some idea of where the gun would have had to have been positioned or pointed and aimed at that direction. And somewhere, if you were to draw out where that rod is pointing, somewhere along that line, a gun was pointing in that same direction and firing that bullet, which passed.
Objection, or outside the scope of this witness's expertise.
Overruled.
You can finish.
Somewhere along that line is going to be the passing of the bullet through the same location where the rod is.
Now, I'm placing on the Elmo, let me move these first. I'm placing on the Elmo
It discharged and he kept firing. Again, it doesn't make
22J.
sense.
We see
It
in
does
this
not make
photo
sense.
the bunk beds and a measuring tool. Are we looking at the top bunk here, or are we looking at the bottom bunk here?
This is still the top bunk, ma'am.
How tall is the topmost portion of the top rail of the top bunk?
It's measured at 5 feet with the large red 5, and then 5 inches with the smaller white in the black background 5.
So is it safe to say that I'm understanding the top most tall portion of the top bunk is 5 feet 5 inches.
Yes, ma'am. The very top of, tippy top of the rail, so to speak, would be 5 feet and 5 inches from the floor height.
And to orient the jury, we see in the top left a green sticker that's placed on the wall. And on the photo, it's to the left of the measuring tool. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yes.
How tall is Jermaine?
I'm placing on the Elmo states 22R. Is that the same? And for the record, once I've placed 22R in the Elmo, I'm pointing to the left portion. There's only one green sticker on the wall, and I'm pointing to it right now. Is that the same sticker that I'm pointing to in 22R that is apparent in 22JJ that we see to the left of the measuring marker?
Yes, ma'am. That would be the same sticker.
Okay. Based on your training and experience, the fact that you were at the scene, I'm placing 22RRR on the Elmo. And it's fuzzy.
22 6 feet tall.
In 22RRR, we see
Still
damage
wouldn't be
A
comfortable.
that we've referred to before. Knowing that the topmost portion that I'm pointing to on the left side is 5 feet and 5 inches, can you confirm, because you were there, damage A is at least 5 feet 5 inches or higher?
Yes, ma'am. That would be accurate.
Now, I see a green pole that is extending in this photo out of damage A. We've talked about trajectory rods before, but help the jury understand the green pole that is extending out of damage A. Is that a trajectory rod?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm placing on the Elmo 22LLL. This is labeled, damage A1. And just to orient all of us again, there's a lot of A's, A1s, B's. We determined A is in the children's room above the bunk bed, at least 5 feet 5 inches high. Now, where are we for B or for A1?
Now we're on the bathroom side of the wall, so opposite or the adjoining wall from the bedroom. And this is a measurement of that what we believe to be the corresponding damage of A1.
So, based on the measurement that is in the photo, we have a measuring tool placed to the right of damage A1 that we see. What is the measurement or the height of damage A1 in the children's bathroom?
I would put it between 5'5" and 5'6", somewhere right in that area.
Now, before, when we looked at damage 22RRR with a green trajectory pole poking out, the corresponding same green pole, 22LLL, is it the same green trajectory pole?
Yes, ma'am. Same rod.
Specifically, I want you to explain to the jury the significance of 22RRR. I want to draw your attention. Oh, let's give it a second to focus. Looks like it's... Here we go. The trajectory rod, the green trajectory rod, protruding out of damage
Exactly.
A. Explain to the jury the significance of the angle that we see portrayed in this photograph.
Given that we're looking at the wall from what we have interpreted as the entry point, we're dealing with a slightly downward angle, and that angle, for the purpose of this photograph, would be from a left to right
I'm going to
angle.
object again to this witness outside his knowledge and expertise.
Well,
You can answer it.
But it was essentially answered. It's a downward angle and slightly left to right as it's seen in this photograph.
So based on the trajectory rod, is the angle traveling at a downward angle or an upward angle at the point in which it enters the wall marked by damage A?
It's traveling at a downward angle.
22LLL.
It's traveling at a
I'm placing
downward
on the
angle.
Elmo we've looked at before. We've determined the same trajectory rod in damage A is depicted here in damage A1. I want to draw your attention to the angle of the trajectory rod depicted in this photo. I want you to explain the significance of the angle of the trajectory rod
Please
depicted in this
explain.
photo.
It's still traveling at a downward angle.
So the level, so then I want to place on the Elmo 22MMM. To orient us, we're looking at the shower curtain with the marker damage A. Is that 2 or 1? A2. I see a measuring tool to the left of A2. Tell the jury, and I'll actually zoom in a little more because it's kind of hard to see the defect or the hole of damage A2. What is the height of damage A2 that's depicted in
Yeah, I don't know what this proves
We're
either.
looking at just a little below the 5-foot mark.
So let's say
4'11" and 5 foot.
4'11", right between 4'11" and 5 foot.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you testified before that, and we can see, I'm placing
Or someone on the
back
bunk bed.
elbow.
Tay.
22JJJ. And giving the Elmo a minute. Where we are
Someone
using for
tall or
reference
someone
the
on the
5
bunk
foot,
bed. Who knows?
5-inch height of the outermost, tallest portion of the bunk bed. Then I'm placing 22RRR, where it shows, and we've determined that damage A is higher than that 5 feet, 5-inch measuring marker of our vantage point right here, the pole that I'm pointing to over in the outermost corner. You've previously testified that the trajectory pole shows a downward trajectory in the photo that we're showing here. And we know 22LLL, you explained, was also showing a downward trajectory of the pole. Is the measurement in 22 MMM that I'm placing on the Elmo consistent with the trajectory being at a downward angle coming from the wall, damage A1, to the shower curtain, damage A2?
Objection, just again, and ask for continuing objection to this witness giving his testimony.
All right. The objections have overruled. You have a continuing objection.
Thanks.
Line of questioning.
You can answer.
Yes, it would be consistent with the round still descending or being in a downward trajectory as it is traveling towards what we can pretty easily identify as its terminal point where it's embedded in the wall.
Now we're looking on 22NNN, placing it on the Elmo, where we see
Why does she keep
damage
narrating?
A3.
We don't care.
Next to damage A3,
Let's put it on the
we see a
Elmo.
measuring tool. Tell the jury, what is the measurement from the floor, the height of damage A3?
It's between 4'10" and 4'11". 4'10" being kind of the bottom margin of that, where the grout is for that tile, and then 4'11" being the top edge of that damage, and we would expect the actual penetration to be somewhere probably in the middle between 4'10" and 4'11".
Comparing the height of damage A2 that we've determined to be about 5'11" and a half or so.
For 4'11".
4'11", excuse me.
Yeah.
I was looking at the number 5. You're correct. 4'11" of damage A2 and a half or so. To the height
Yeah, it's Florida,
damage
Rhonda.
A3.
Nobody's shocked about the
being slightly below that at
amount of
4
ammo.
foot. Between 10 and 11, it kind of encompasses the whole inch there. Is that consistent with the trajectory rod that we saw in damage A and A1 to be at a downward angle?
Yes, it's still downward or still descending.
I'm placing on the Elmo 22000. The marker on the wall, is that damage A1?
Yes, ma'am, on the right side wall, in the photograph just above the shower towel holder.
On the shower curtain, is that damage A2?
Yes, ma'am.
And we can kind of see, it looks like there's, over here, there's a cabinet on the wall, but sneaking out right behind the cabinet, it looks like we have another yellow marker that goes into the shower tile. Is that damage A3?
Yes, ma'am.
Explain to the jury the purpose of using the trajectory rod from damage A1 in the bathroom wall to A2 in the shower curtain to A3 in the shower tile.
To again show the path of the projectile as it went through the bathroom, or the likely path of the projectile as it's penetrating through the wall, going through the shower curtain, and then embedding in the tile. So this is a fairly accurate representation of what that path would have looked like.
You just used the word the path a few times. What is the path? path?
The path of the bullet or the projectile as it's going through the wall and then ending up in the other wall.
And what is the path? It's at a what angle?
The path and trajectory is at a downward angle in this instance.
Is this the same hole that we see in 22RRR depicted right above damage A?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Now, based on your training and your experience and your evaluation of the trajectory rod used in this investigation, what occurred from damage A to damage A1 to damage A2 and to damage A3?
I think this has been asked and answered, Judge.
Sustained.
I'm placing on the Elmo 22R to reorient us. Are we looking at the top bunk or the bottom bunk?
Top bunk again.
I want to draw your attention to an evidence label entitled Damage B. I'm pointing to it. It's the yellow label that's closest to the bloody mattress. What does that look like to you when you were first there and you first viewed it?
Our belief was that was also a bullet damage or a bullet impact location.
Looking at 22FFF, what are we looking at here? Well, hold on. Let me start out with a larger view of it. And then, what's significant about this damage, specifically when you zoom in?
We believed, again, this is just a zoomed in or a closer up photograph of one of the preceding photographs of the same damage at damage B. We're seeing some blood in that same area as well as some breaking of the wood on that framework. And towards the right, I would say the right edge of that damage, there's a little bit of rounded shape to
almost
that damage that we thought might be consistent with a bullet or a projectile striking that area.
Now, was that damage that's depicted in damage B what sometimes law enforcement would call a through and through, meaning that
Give me
there's
one
an
second,
entrance
yo.
and an exit?
In terms of a medium before making that impact?
Correct. Like, is there a hole on the other side?
So for this area of wood, no, when we moved that rail away and moved the whole bed away from the wall, we did not see a corresponding hole coming through that piece of wood. So to us, it just looked like a fracture or a damage on the front side of the wood.
Looking at 22XX. Is this another view of the damage that you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
You can just have a moment. During your investigation, did you have an occasion to inspect both the top mattress and bottom mattress for places that may be of evidentiary value?
Yes, ma'am, we did that.
Tell us about your inspection of the top bunk mattress.
In this same general vicinity of where we're looking at now, near where the damage B is, we did find a defect or what looks to be a tear or hole in the top fabric material of that same mattress.
In the photo that we're looking at, 22XX, where was the defect that you noticed in the mattress?
It's close to the same area where damage B is, a little bit inset from the mattress, so away from the wall, but where one of the concentrations of blood is located.
Judge, can the witness stand up, please, to identify the area he's discussing?
Yes.
Please stand up and point to
It
it.
would have been in this upper portion of the mattress, just forward of where damage B is, or just for the purpose where you're viewing it on the television screen, to the left of where damage B is located.
I'm placing 22D on the Elmo. Point to the area so the jury understands of what you're talking about where you noticed a defect in the mattress.
Can you zoom in a little bit, ma'am?
Mm-hmm.
The area of defect for this is going to be along where the same area. There's a splitting of kind of the foam in the mattress here, and that's part of where the blood was also. There's a little bit of blood that came through the mattress in that same location.
We're using the term defect, which feels like a more scientific term. In lay terms, what do you mean by the word defect?
a damage to it or a hole that is coming through it, some sort of tear or hole in the fabric.
Could that be seen from the top of the mattress before it's peeled up as we see depicted in this photo?
A little bit, yes. That was where we were initially drawn to the location of the hole or the torn area of the mattress from the top.
So you see this on the top, this torn area, and you decide to peel it up like we see depicted in this photograph, which is 22DDD. After seeing what you see depicted in 22DDD, what did you do next?
Continued to cut through that mattress to try to locate if there was an actual projectile somewhere in the mattress.
Surprising they cut through the mattress like that.
22EEE.
That happens all the time.
22EEE.
Now we're looking at the same mattress but with the entire top layer peeled back. So now we're looking at the interior spring arrangement of the mattress.
Where did all that
What
blood
we're
come
looking at,
from?
You just described in 22
That's what I wanna know.
Is this the same mattress depicted in 22DDD where we see it peeled up to reveal the foam?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it the same mattress that we're looking at in 22X, which is the mattress depicted in this photo to be on the top bunk that has blood pooling and staining?
Yes, ma'am.
After peeling back to see the springs in 22EEE, tell the jury what you noticed.
A projectile was located within this space where the springs were.
I'm placing on the Elmo 22FFF. This is significant. Number one, what are we looking at?
We're looking at a zoomed in picture, kind of a continuation of the previous picture of the spring arrangement.
And I want to draw your and the jury's attention to, it looks like an item that I'm placing my finger to. It's kind of a semicircle portion of an item. What is that item?
That would be a projectile, ma'am, or a bullet.
Is that consistent with the damage or defect that you saw occurred in the foam that you described before?
Where did that bullet come from, though?
22GGG, I'm placing on the Elmo. What are we looking at?
That would be the actual recovered bullet or projectile, just held in a palm.
The recovered bullet or projectile that we're looking at in this photo, is it the same as the projectile that's depicted and that we just pointed out in 22FFF?
Yes, ma'am.
And the projectile that we just pointed out in 22FFF, is it found in the same area as the defect that you described in the foam depicted in 22DDD?
It's actually a little bit towards the opposite side of the mattress, a little bit further in to the opposite side. It is still the same mattress, but it is not directly beneath where this damage is located, but a little bit further away within the mattress or within the spring space of the mattress.
Can you stand up and show us?
Yes. It would be found kind of towards the top of the screen on that side of the mattress.
So help us understand. Do you believe, based on your training and experience, the location, and for the record, I have 22X on the Elmo where it depicts damage.
I got you,
B,
Mr. Brown.
that damage B and the projectile found in the mattress depicted in 22GGG are related.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell the jury why you feel that way.
It was our belief that what you're seeing at damage B is going to be a deflection point where it is impacting or coming in contact with the side rail of the bed and then deflecting back in the opposite direction into the mattress and embedding itself through the
Objecting on
mattress.
the lack of foundation and proper opinion for
All right.
PSV.
Overruled.
You can repeat it because she was talking.
Where it's impacting the railing and then deflecting and coming back, or ricocheting and coming back through the mattress and ultimately being located in the mattress through the space where the springs are located.
Thank you, Amy. Let them know.
If I may just have a moment, Judge, I need to set these aside. Behind the top railing of the top bunk bed, at some point we see another trajectory pole that is like a red or pink in color. You recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
One moment.
Yep, there's the 380 and the 9mm.
During your investigation, did you have an occasion to follow the trajectory of that damage to the wall and determine what happened at that point of entry?
Yes, ma'am. As I recall, the initial entry into the wall is marked by B1. It clashes a little bit with B, but that was because at the time that we were investigating, we thought that B1 may be a continuation of the damage to B through the frame into B1. However, once the bed was removed from the wall, we realized there is no continuation or no hole on the back side of B. Therefore, B1 was identified as a separate and independent bullet damage to the wall, accounting for a different projectile.
And I'm placing on the Elmo 22FF. We
Sounds
see
like it.
damage B, but behind that on the wall, we see poking out a yellow evidence marker. Is that what you're discussing, that you thought that damage B and what's behind the evidence marker on the wall, you thought they were related?
Yes, ma'am, we did. The one behind it, though you can't see it, it's going to be the same one. That's going to be seen later as damage B1.
Damage B1, did you determine on the other side of that wall where that projectile landed?
Yes, we
So
did.
it did
While
go
there's
through
not
the
a punch
railing
through the wall,
there.
with an actual exit hole, we do see a kind of conical shape on the back side of that wall where it looks like something impacted and it just didn't come all the way through the wall. So it struck the wall from the space, the voided space in between the wall, but it didn't actually go all the way through the drywall. It just struck the bathroom side of the wall.
And we're looking at 22QQQ. Damage B2 we see labeled on here. Is that what we would call the defect on the wall that you noticed that was related to damage?
Oh, there we go. We were
Yes,
doing
ma'am,
so
it
good
is.
too.
Tell the jury about the different heights of damage B1 and damage B2.
Those would also be in a downward trajectory from where we think our entry point is on the bedroom side of the wall to where we see our impact point on the bathroom side of the wall.
I'm placing on the Elmo 22PPP. What's the height of the damage of B2?
Can you back out just a little bit?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I didn't realize it was still so zoomed in.
Yeah, great question from Rice Street says, are they saying more than one gun or they just found the other ammo? They found the other gun with the spent shell casings, but from what I understand, it was just the 380 that was fired, allegedly.
So the floor is almost covered, but we're looking at 4 feet and somewhere again in between 9 and 10 inches. So 4 foot 9.5-ish on the bathroom side of the damage.
And
Which doesn't make sense.
Damage B1, that would be depicted in 22F. Again, we're only seeing the very edge of the marker behind here. But just for reference, is this the same top portion of the top bunk that we've measured out as 5 feet and 5 inches?
Yes, the very top rail with a little bit of extra would be the 5 foot and 5 inches location.
I'm placing on the Elmo 22CCC. What are we looking at here?
Some poorly done demolition, and then that's going to be a projectile that was recovered from the wall.
After the search warrant was conducted, did you walk
thank you,
around
Tangi.
the whole townhome alongside Shannon Bader and help direct her as to what needed to be photographed and what needed to be marked with the different evidence markers?
Yes, I wouldn't say that we're necessarily in lockstep as we're going through, but everything that is marked as evidence is either something that was noted by her or something that was noted by myself, and then together or in tandem, we will assure each other that we are aware of everything that has been marked as evidence.
Putting on the Elmo 22FFFF. This was a photo we did not have a chance to view yesterday. Can you
Right, they just
orient
found
us,
the spent
to
shell
what we're looking
casings.
at in
That's what I heard.
22FFFF?
This would be a picture taken from the kitchen, looking at the edge of the kitchen counter. To the left margin of the photograph, you can see a table and chairs. That's the dining room table and chairs. To the right edge, I can point this behind me, but we're seeing the slim edge of what looks like a darker colored or brown door. That would be the front door in an open position.
So the front door is out on the first floor of this townhome that we've discussed.
That's correct. This is the first floor.
Now, throughout your investigation and in your experience as a detective or a scene detective in a homicide investigation, help us understand, are you given parameters on what needs to be swabbed and what doesn't need to be swabbed for DNA purposes?
No, I think that's something that generally evolves as we're going through the investigation.
Is he in charge
There's
of
no
that?
hard, fast rule for what does need to swab or what doesn't need to swab. Generally, we're doing an accumulation of different swabs for target areas, either heavily saturated areas, For instance, if we have what we perceive to be a trail or a series of droplets that start from A all the way to Z, we may take just some of the swabs along that way because we're demonstrating it is a path or it is something we can readily identify as a continuation of droplets. And we may swab at the first point, the last point, and one or two spots in between. So we don't always swab every single spot that we are seeing at a scene, and we don't always swab every single puddle that we see at a scene or pooling
think I
area that
have
we
some
see at a scene.
membership so I can get
But
away.
generally, we're swabbing or looking for areas that we think are of specific interest for the investigation.
When you decide what needs to be swabbed or what doesn't need to be swabbed, do you take into consideration the information that you were given by the responding deputies when you first arrived at a homicide scene?
Yes, ma'am, that's fair.
In this scene, when you arrived, did you ever become aware that there were any other victims other than the children, Jayla and JJ Bass, in this scene?
For trauma, no, we were not aware of there being any other victims.
Did you have occasion to inspect or look at the firearm when it was found during the execution of the search warrant?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And the magazine
Were there
of
being
that
other victims?
firearm that was found during the execution of the search warrant, did you
There we
take
go.
that information into consideration, how many bullets or projectiles it held when you were looking for things in the children's bedroom, such as projectiles or casings?
For the totality of the investigation, yes, that was considered. The number of casings that were located in the bedroom, I believe, were found before we even found the firearm.
So when you are a scene detective at a homicide scene, we've used words such as projectiles and words such as casing. What's the difference between a projectile and a casing?
Projectile is kind of
Projectile
synonymous with
is
bullet. It's the actual portion
unspent.
that goes out from the gun and strikes whatever it strikes. Our casing is the back portion of the entire bullet that is expelled from the firearm. In this case, if it's a semi-automatic, it's expelled out of the firearm and lands somewhere off to the side of where the firearm is at the time that the shot is fired.
So we're talking about things being expelled from firearms, and someone who may not have experience could get confused. Where does a projectile expel from a firearm?
The shell casing.
The trigger is pulled and the bullet, the entire casing is ignited. The bullet is going out of the barrel and then the slide is sliding back and then your casing is coming out of the side. Generally speaking, most firearms are right side ported, so you're going to have your casing coming out of the right side. And generally speaking, again, most times it comes in a slightly backwards direction off to the right side. That is in a standard position of holding the firearm. Any variation of rotating the firearm or angling the firearm will cause that casing to come out at a slightly different angle.
How many total casings were found at this crime scene associated with this case?
We recovered 5 spent casings from the bedroom.
How many
Okay.
projectiles were recovered at the scene of this investigation?
We recovered 3 projectiles from the scene.
That makes sense.
When you're saying 3 projectiles, does that include things like fragments?
Include what?
Things like fragments.
In this instance, I don't believe we recovered fragments. I think every one of the projectiles we recovered was intact.
During this investigation, you explained to us before that you work closely with the lead investigator and other detectives in the case. Does that include finding out whether or not any of the victims who were transported to the hospital or to the medical examiner's office had projectiles or fragments contained within their bodies?
We would eventually become aware of that. I don't know if we were aware of that at the time that we were working our scene.
How many other projectiles were recovered?
There was 1 other projectile recovered from autopsy,
From whose body?
from Jayla Bass's body.
May I have just a moment, Judge?
Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy that they didn't do any GSR either.
Bit of a mess, so I'm gonna try to.
Get it together.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't have any further questions.
All right, Cross?